And looks like we're live. Well, good evening, everyone. We finally made it. We are in meteorological fall. That's right. Meteorological fall started on Labor Day, September 1st, and should I say, astronomical fall starts on September 21st. So we got some time before that. But in all intents and purposes, climatologically speaking, we are in fall, and that means we could start talking more and more about the cold season and what we could expect. And of course, we'll continue to keep an eye on the tropics. Now, just so you know, I have started to issue a football NFL forecast slash picks that went up this afternoon, and I'll have it updated every Wednesday. And I got something crawling on my leg now, and that is a spider. Wonderful. Alrighty then. Well, let's start off good. We have spiders just in time for Halloween. That's perfect. All right, so let's take a look. And of course, as part of fall, the fall tradition, my throat's starting to get a little dry already. I got some lozenges. I am fully stocked this year. So hopefully that will not be too much of an issue. But as you know, that always becomes more and more of an issue due to allergies and whatnot. And let's take a look at some of the observations. There's a lot of talk out there about tropical disturbance that has an 80% chance of developing, according to NHC. Can you pick it out? If you're saying maybe this, nope. It's actually way up here. This little feature up here, this tropical wave, which is having a hard time producing convection. Now, why am I pointing this out? Well, there are a lot of people running around, as they often do, making all sorts of interesting declarations about this potential system. Problem is that we don't even have a low level circulation. Now, there is very strong model support for something to develop right around here, where the conditions are pretty favorable for development, so it would make sense. But we don't know the exact track. Now, I know people are going to make a focus on the trends of the models, but here's the problem. Until we get a low level circulation, we can't really trust any of these solutions. So, what do you do? Well, you study the 500 millibar pattern and the precipitable water values and how that's shaping up. So, let's take a look at that. And what we generally have in this scenario is you have a disturbance fighting a lot of dry air. So you see that dry air influence fighting. Whenever this disturbance starts to develop, looks like it really starts to take shape on Friday night into Saturday morning. And then it marches across, and it's under the influence of our Western Atlantic Ridge and our deep trough over the eastern United States. So basically, your steering currents are taking whatever that does develop here, whether it's up here or down here, basically towards the Lesser Antilles and possibly towards the Greater Antilles. Now, regardless of what track you follow, the one thing that's very clear is that whatever does develop is going to be small and it's going to be under a lot of onslaught in terms of dry air. So we don't know what the intensity is going to be. We don't know what the track is going to be because we don't have an actual warm core low. So there's no point in jumping to conclusions on where this is going to track or how it's going to impact anybody or if it even impacts anyone until we get a low level circulation developed. Then once we do, then game on. Then we could start to take a look at the different solutions. Where is this low pressure system in respect to the rest of the 500 millibar pattern? How does that work out? How does intensification enhance the 500 millibar pattern, weaken the 500 millibar pattern, all that stuff, and what are the timing of the different troughs? All that is unknown, and there's no point unless you want to get a lot of, traffic and hits and stuff. There's no point in really diving much more into that. So until we actually get this to develop into something, right now it's all guesswork. And you can really tell that by the initial start of the model guidance for this disturbance, in which has all sorts of low pressure systems. Some rotate back towards Africa, some just kind of meander about and die out. Some of them start to lift to the northwest, others to the west, some go to the east. So, what does this tell me? The model guidance is having a hard time handling the resolution and potential of this. All we know is that something is going to pop up here. We don't know what the strength is, and we don't know the exact position. But then once we do, I expect the model guides to consolidate and we get a pretty good idea of what we can expect. But in the meantime, it's pretty much a guessing game. As I always say, I mean, we are in the heart of the hurricane season. Right now, as always, is time to prepare, not to panic. All right, because panicking are for fools and Crazy Eddie from the 1980s. Okay, what you want to do is be prepared, and you should be, because I've been telling you this for months. You have your supplies, you have your water, you have your batteries, you have your exit plan, you have a set of clothes, you have non-perishable foods. You got all that already. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show. Don't worry about it right now. When we actually get a tropical low that actually develops, then we can really dive into some of the data. Now, let's talk about the fall. Heck, people are already putting out winter forecasts. Some very interesting ones from what I've seen. Um, okay, so why have I not put out a winter forecast yet? Well, for one, there's a lot of factors we still don't know. We don't know the snow growth in Siberia. Okay, that's a very important feature. And forget the snow growth in Siberia, we don't have the snow growth in Canada. So we don't know what the state of the polar and Arctic air masses are. We don't know what the state of the sea ice is going to be, which influences high latitude blocking and enhancement of the polar jet stream. We don't know what's the actual evolution of the El Nino La Nina oscillation here. Right? We have no clue, which we'll talk about that in a moment. So there's that wild card. Okay. Let's see. What else do we have? Oh yeah, we don't know the rate of the polar vortex because it hasn't really formed yet. Okay, so we don't know whether it's starting out strong, if it's starting to weaken, all that stuff. So there's a lot of wild cards. So yeah, you could definitely put out something. What most likely you could do is take a canned sips solution or the European 45 day, the monthly forecast, and you could put something out and put out the worst case scenario. I don't know, like a ton of winter storms, in span of 3 weeks or some crazy nonsense like that. You could do all that stuff. You'll get a lot of traffic too. Trust me, you'll get a ton of traffic, but you won't get much credibility if you care about that. So that's why I haven't put out a winter forecast, because there's a lot we don't know. But let's take a look at what we do know. What we do know is that the SOI is rather right? It's been bouncing around neutral, a little negative, a little positive. It's influenced more by what is happening with the MJO more than anything else. It clearly isn't under the influence of an Enso state because there is none right now. It's basically kind of what we call cold neutral. So our MJO has been moving through phases 1 and 2. That's when the tropics were picking up. Then phase 3 and 4, when the tropics are quieting down. So basic idea, phases 3 through 6, La Nina ish. Phases 7 through 2, El Nino ish. Okay. So when you have these phases here, you end up with a positive SOI. When you have these phases here, you typically end up with a negative SOI. So when we go back and take a look at the SOI, which again is the Southern Oscillation Index, it's the measure of the pressure, which tells you the wind, which tells you what type of oscillation you're in. So when you're in El Nino, your SOI is usually like right down here, 10, -10, -15, stuff like that. When you are in La Nina, you are typically around 10, 15, somewhere in this ballpark here. Strong values way up here. Okay, so when you're in your strong Enso offense, you're way down here and way up here. Your moderates are usually right here. Your weak is somewhere between 5 and 10, and the same thing -5 and 10. And then you have your neutral state, which usually bounces between 5 and -5. And that is generally where we've been. So this would suggest more of a cold neutral, very weak signal. Very weak signal means it can be overridden pretty quickly, and other influences can become the more dominant factor here. So this is very interesting for me to watch personally. I keep an eye on this because it tells me not only what type of state we're in, but how strong of a state we're in and how much of an influence it has on our weather pattern. So as you can see, it's been, well, kind of stagnant in that cold neutral state. And when we take a look at the Enso states here, what I am watching here, and what I will be talking about for several weeks in the premium section, is where are we with the equatorial upper ocean anomalies? Because that's going to tell us where we're going to go. And the thing I've been harping on, and what I will point out tonight, is that these cold anomalies here, thus far, are more supportive of a cold neutral state than any type of sustained La Nina. Okay. Now, cold neutral basically means you end up with a subtropical jet stream that is present, but it's not very strong. It can throw in some wild cards, but it isn't a dominant feature, right? So, but at the same time, the orientation of the 500 millibar pattern is usually influenced by other factors like stratospheric factors like the QBO or the stratospheric warming influences, the rate of transport from the troposphere to the stratosphere, which will follow over the next couple of weeks, called the EP flux. We'll keep an eye on that. So all those other factors, right? This tells me, yeah, it's going to be present, but it's not going to be dominant. Okay. So that's a very important signal. And as far as the surface temperatures, probably will be bouncing around in this range here between minus 0.4 degrees Celsius and minus 0.6 degrees Celsius in the 3.4 and 3 region. That's kind of what I expect. Very weak, very um, weak signal influenced here. Now, another thing that is very interesting to me is what we call the atmospheric angular momentum, the AAM. Why am I interested in this? Well, when the AAM is positive, it usually supports more of a La Nina type of feel to the weather pattern. When it's negative, it's more of a El Nino type. Okay, very general explanation here. But basically, negative means more high latitude blocking. So, this forecast of the atmospheric angular momentum runs counter to the La Nina support. They kind of clash, like they're not in sync here. So we don't have an in sync weather pattern here. Very interesting. Very interesting. Which is why you don't jump the gun to make forecasts, 6 months out. You just don't do that because this should be a warning sign. It also tells me keep an eye out for more sustained negative EPOs. Why am I concerned about that? Well, this QBO. The QBO is the study of the stratospheric winds around the equator, usually around 30 millibars. We can also do 50 millibars. But basically, the idea here, we've been talking about this for quite some time. It's an easterly state. Last year, westerly state. Easterly state gives you more stratospheric warming events, higher potential for high latitude blocking. Now, that does not guarantee an active storm track in your backyard. It just means that the high latitude blocking over the northern hemisphere is far more likely and more sustained. You could end up with a very sustained negative EPO, but a positive NAO. So then those on the mid Atlantic coast miss out on a lot of storms, but it gets chilly. That's certainly a possibility, or the other way around. So you have to keep an eye on this. How is the pattern evolving? And one thing that I have been watching, or I've been commenting on for weeks, really months, is the state of our stratospheric warming. Not the fact that it is warming, where it's warming, right? Location is key in real estate, baseball, and weather. In this case, we have been seeing a sustained warming over the northern Pacific, and now we're getting more and more sustained warming over the northern Atlantic. These two factors tell me, okay, you have warming in the stratosphere. The warming can't expand out to space. It gets pressed down, right? So with that pressing down, as the column is expanding and pressing down onto the troposphere, it leads to kind of like a digging into the troposphere. So that leads to below normal heights in the troposphere, right? So when you get those below normal heights, that means upper level lows, more high latitude blocking scenarios, tending to set up here and here. And we're also seeing a reduction in warm anomalies over Greenland and more cold anomalies starting to show up here. So this would support, in theory, more above normal heights here, below normal heights here and here, which would lead to a nice little trough here, trough here, and here. Sound familiar? It's basically the weather pattern we've been dealing with all summer long. The negative EPO pattern, right? And it doesn't look like it's going away. Bless you. It doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. And the reason why I say that is not because of model guidance or any of that. The observations have been pretty strong and sustained. You want to talk about sustained? How about like since May? Okay, this feature has been here. And since May, we've been dealing with that negative EPO pattern. We've been on the warm side of it, where the trough axis is towards the Tennessee River Valley. It's a shorter trough axis because the wavelengths are shorter because it's summer. But as we get into the cold season, the wavelength is expanding. So now we're getting more towards the colder side of that influence. And now we're getting our polar air masses involved. Whereas beforehand, we were getting air masses coming in from the Gulf Coast and at times from the Canadian Maritimes because of the support of the negative NAO. So now we're starting to see same pattern influences, but different types of impacts because the wavelengths are changing in the atmosphere. So there's a lot going on here, and so the EPO that I've been watching, right? It For the 46-day forecast here, it continues to go negative for much of September. Then it starts to relax. So don't be surprised if we get a little bit of a warm spell around maybe late September, early October, right in time for playoff baseball. And then we fall right back into a negative state as we move towards the middle of the month, and most likely through November. This makes a lot of sense because it's unusual to have a sustained high latitude blocking just continue from the summer through the fall and into the winter. You usually have breaks. This makes a lot of sense in that respect. But notice it's not strongly positive. It just kind of weakens a little bit. It kind of gives away just a little bit and goes slightly positive and then goes right back into a negative state because of the stratospheric influences, not because of what's going on with ENSO. So we still have a lot of other factors that we have to keep an eye on. It's important not to jump the gun, but as you can see, in our forecast, even though let's go all the way out to mid-October, right? Now, obviously, you don't take this verbatim, but this is how you're supposed to use the model guidance. Okay, out to mid-October, what are the general themes? We have a trough here still around the Aleutians and the Gulf of Alaska, a ridge around Alaska and through the western Canada. You have a trough-like feature, very weak, over the eastern two-thirds of the United States. You have heights building over the northern plains and the Rockies, and also heights building into Greenland here. So again, you don't take this verbatim, but generally what you have here, let me see if I can draw this correctly. So hopefully I can pull this off if it allows me to. 1 second. It might not. We'll see. And it might not. That's okay. We will try one more time. There we go. There we are. Okay, so generally it's producing a trough, ridge, like that. Very, very basic. Okay. Now, again, you don't take this verbatim, but basically that is essentially what we're dealing with here in this type of weather pattern based on what we're seeing here with the model guidance. You don't take that verbatim, but again, it's kind of like where it is pointing towards. And also the operational guidance is generally showing the same thing. Continued theme. One thing to also note the position of this trough axis. Positive tilt, very important. Okay. Anyone running around saying, oh, I don't know, using the 18Z GFS, they screaming hurricane, 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 tell them to shut up. Because all the model guides, even the GFS, has a positively tilted trough here. Whenever you have a positive tilted trough, that means all your steering currents are from the south and southwest here. So anything that's approaching here, right out into the Atlantic. Just physics, right? So the reason why the GFS is having some issues with that is that having some convective feedback error. It produces too strong of an upper level low, which leads to, should I say, a warm core low, which leads to a building of the Western Atlantic Ridge, which allows it to slam into North Carolina and move up the coast. But it's not realistic because of various factors that we already talked about, but also because usually tropical systems don't work that way up against a strong upper level trough. So that is just something just to keep an eye on. And of course, this type of weather pattern will send in plenty of polar air masses. So if you like a nice, cool, comfortable start to fall, you got it. It is set up nicely. But again, this doesn't mean that we won't see a hot day from time to time. Perfect example will be Saturday, where we'll be pushing into the upper 80s to lower 90s ahead of our cold front. And let me dive into that. And we're missing observations here, but you get the idea here. We have tranquil conditions in place. Here comes trouble. Here comes our cold front that will march through. We have a couple of troughs out ahead of it, and that's what's going to open up the potential for scattered showers. But it's not a strongly impressive storm setup here. Okay, we have a lot of southwesterly flow, so we're going to be warming up pretty nicely. Nice little weak warm air transport setting up, so we'll be gradually getting warmer as we move on through the next couple of days until we peak on Saturday. Our upper level winds, mid level winds, and surface winds all pretty much align the same from the south. Southeast right now at the surface are shifting to the south. Everywhere else is south southwest. Why am I pointing that out? The reason why I'm pointing that out is that if we do get any thunderstorms, the upper level winds are unidirectional. Don't expect much in the way of any type of severe thunderstorm. However, on Saturday, and we'll take a look at that in a minute, we're going to have a lot of moisture to deal with, and that's going to open up the potential for some downburst wind gusts that could set up an isolated severe thunderstorm. But I just kind of want to show you all the winds are kind of aligned to the southwesterly component, transporting warmer air and moisture into our region, kind of driving out the polar air mass that has been in place for the past couple of days. And so on our water vapor satellite picture, you can see that evolution very nicely. Here's our deep trough that is on the way, and short wave after short wave on the move. So when we take a look at the model guidance here, and we'll go all the way through Saturday, again, you can see that southwesterly flow clearly in place at all levels of the atmosphere. So kind of, again, supports the idea of a unidirectional wind. We don't have a lot of vertical wind shear in this setup, but again, the downburst wind gust potential, it shows up. In the upper level PVA, 500 millibar PVA, notice we don't have a lot over the northern mid-Atlantic. So here's what's basically happening here. This deep upper level low that is sitting to the north of the Great Lakes is going to slowly lift up towards Quebec. While it's doing so, it's going to slingshot this shortwave towards the Great Lakes, which is going to drive our surface cold front. The surface cold front is also reinforced by a strong mid-level shortwave, which is right here, which helps to drive the cold front through and opens up the potential for showers and thunderstorms. We have the showers and thunderstorms because, hey, you got plenty of moisture to work with. And as this cold front moves through, you're talking about precipitable water values spiking up to between 1 to 2 inches, which is why we have that downburst wind gust threat, because of all that deep moisture in the lower levels of the atmosphere being lifted up into drier air at 500 millibars and slamming down towards the surface. So we'll have to watch out for that on Saturday afternoon and evening. But Cape values are not all that impressive. You get a spike maybe up to 1,500 joules per kilogram, maybe 1,700. strong enough to produce some good thunderstorms, but not widespread severe weather in any way, shape, or form. And again, we already talked about the wind gust potential here. One thing I wanted to show you was the thermal gradient here. This cold front on Saturday is going to pack a punch because it actually has strong cold air transport associated with it. Unlike the other cold fronts we've had much of the summer, this one's actually going to produce a change in the air mass that you'll definitely feel on Sunday with beautiful weather conditions returning. So in this setup, let's take a look at the NAM for a second. Let me refresh to see if I got the 18Z in yet. I might. I think I do. I can't wait till the clocks fall back. Then I know I got all the model guides I want to show. Well, here we are. Okay, so for tomorrow, right as the Eagles get ready to play, you're going to have a few pesky showers and a few isolated thunderstorms. I do expect them to be playing in wet conditions. I mentioned that this morning, so it's going to be pretty interesting game for the Eagles to start the year. I don't think there's going to be a lot in the way of thunderstorms, but I wouldn't be surprised they get a flash of lightning if they have a delay. So just keep an eye out on that. That moves through, and then on Friday we have our next wave that comes through with more isolated showers and thunderstorms. And then we have our setup for Saturday with our cold front swinging on through with additional showers and thunderstorms. So a bit stormy as we move through at least Saturday night. And then finally, when we get to Sunday, everything clears out and we get far more comfortable. So that's all I got for tonight. Well, of course, I'm going to take all your questions the way it goes, just in case you're new. We take all the questions from the premium members and we answer all of them as much as possible, or until my voice collapses, either one. Then we check out, see what's going on social media, usually YouTube, Facebook, and X. So with that, we'll start off with what is happening here. And yes, I am keeping an eye on the baseball scores. The Yankees have tied. Holy smokes, the Brewers are absolutely beating the tar out of the Phillies, which is good. The Mets already lost, but they already won the series, so I'm not too angry about that. And oh shoot, the Blue Jays are passing the Reds. They were down by a lot. Wow. Well, baseball is certainly getting interesting. If I may add one thing about baseball, this year is going to be crazy in the playoffs because it doesn't seem like anybody can pitch. So, which is good for the Mets because half their rotation can't pitch. So we'll see what happens. Let's see here. We've got a couple of good questions here. Uh, yes, the Yankees are on Amazon, unfortunately. I feel sorry for Yankee fans on that. Let's see here. What is the timing of tomorrow's storms for Western Essex and Union counties? Let me go back to the NAM guidance. And again, I don't expect there to be a lot of strong storms out of this, but a lot of this is going to be occurring after 7 p.m., which means our instability is going to be falling. Looks like a pretty good impact after 7:30 and continuing on through 10 p.m. Same sun angle as mid-April. Yes, I am looking forward to it. I know I'm weird. Okay, I get it. I enjoy it when it's dark out earlier. Not many people do, but I do. I like it. I think it's because yeah, I know you don't like it either. I know. No one else likes it, but I do. I think it's because I grew up as a Batman fan, and then you did the opening of Batman where it got dark earlier. I just enjoy it more. Let's see here. Solar observations, even when we get periods with more sunspot activity, for the most part, they are stable with maybe one or two unstable, and then they decay much faster. No sunspots coming around 2 or 3 times like they were last spring. Yeah, we're definitely heading towards the push towards a more quiet sun that we'll probably see over the next 2 years. I think the frequency remains high through this winter, but you're right about the intensity of these sunspots and how they're impacting the ionosphere. I think that's going to decline as you move through the winter, which is going to be interesting to see how the ozone reacts in that respect. Some really impressive cold air to the west of central of the center of the upper level low north of Michigan and Wisconsin. Let's see if I can pull that up here. Let's see. Actually, we'll do 850. Put this up. Temperatures. There we go. There's that cold air. Let's zoom back. Look at that. Now this is a nice expensive polar air mass for this time of year. And you can see the transport here just getting ready for Sunday. This is all heading our way for Sunday with a nice fresh polar air mass. So if you're heading out to a baseball game, football game, what have you on Sunday, it is going to be absolutely beautiful out. Let's see here. My recollection is that once that kind of month sustained warm pool in the stratosphere gets going, it can persist for a long time. Yes, that is a concern of mine and why I want to watch to see if this continues to keep rolling through. Let's see here. Yeah, definitely the GFS is total junk. Do you anticipate any flash flooding or flooding from the showers and thunderstorms that come through tomorrow and Saturday? I don't want to say 100%. No widespread flooding. Could be some urban flooding because some people don't protect their drains, but I don't expect any type of massive flooding or anything of that nature, mostly because these showers and thunderstorms are going to be moving along pretty quickly at a steady pace from southwest to northeast and west to east with the line overall. That I don't see it like as like a thunderstorm that's producing a half an inch per hour, moving very, very slowly. That isn't going to be that type of scenario. These are going to be fast moving thunderstorms and showers. And while they'll be able to produce heavy downpours, I think that for the most part, flooding is going to be limited. I do expect some flash flood warnings just because of the intensity of the rainfall, but I don't think we'll see a buildup in widespread heavy rainfall. Let's see what we got in YouTube land. Um, don't know about whether we see an early onset of winter. A lot of that has to do with what I see this month and next month in terms of the end snow state and how the atmospheric angular momentum is reacting to it. What are your thoughts on northern Pacific sea surface temperatures? Warm anomalies extend across the entire region from Japan to the west coast of the U.S. This negative PDO behaved different than traditional. Um, I think that this Pacific setup is going to be a little funky in terms of the way it's going to be enhancing the negative EPO pattern. I think that it's setting up. Sometimes a lot of people look at the sea surface temperature anomalies as a driver, but it can be both. And I think in this scenario, I think the sea surface temperatures are acting like a feedback mechanism for the negative EPO that's in place. And the negative EPO is being driven by the stratospheric influences. So the sea surface temperature anomaly setup is created by the 500 millibar pattern and then feeding back on it to continue it to repeat itself. So I think that is what we're seeing. Um, but again, I reserve, that I want to continue to watch this evolution play out as we move forward. Do you see above normal or below normal rainfall for September and October? Um, Outside of a tropical influence, I'm expecting below normal rainfall to near normal. I say below normal to near normal because there might be a couple of coastal storms I have to watch out for, extratropical version. Um, in October based on the state of the negative EPO. But as far as I could tell for September, generally below normal. It's too early to say whether whether any storm track in December or January is going to be suppressed or not. You might be right. You could be wrong. Don't know. What I would say, Dylan, is write down the reasonings why. Don't just say I think this. If you want to be a good forecaster, write down why you think that's going to happen. Keep it to yourself and then compare that to the actual observations to see what you got right and what you got wrong. That's how you become better. Let's see here. Do you think there's a risk of thunderstorms or downpours around New York City on Friday? Yes. Or Saturday afternoon? Yes. Especially on Saturday afternoon. Will the second coast this the second front will make it to the coast by Saturday evening, not by so much by Saturday afternoon. Do we have any questions on X or YouTube? Okay. Facebook's always good on Facebook. Will that hurricane heading towards Hawaii have any impact on the pattern in the Pacific? No. In fact, I already saw some people already talking about this hurricane. By the time it reaches Hawaii, it's going to be running into a lot of shear and colder water that it will be collapsing. So it won't have any type of significant impact on our 500 millibar pattern, but it could enhance an approaching cold front that eventually reaches California or the Pacific Northwest in the coming days, but no direct impact on the 500 millibar pattern. Let's see. But definitely some good questions, guys. That is for sure. And yeah, I mean, I am in. I just have to say this one thing while I'm waiting for more questions to roll in. I am very much impressed with the way that baseball has evolved. I don't like the pitch clock, but I do recognize it makes the game faster for those who can't sit around just watch a game and zone out for a bit. But I get it. Um, I'm really excited about the playoffs because I think it's going to be like a lot of games like 8-6, 10-8, and I think the Mets can win those games. How are we doing? Nothing? Okay. That works for me. Let's see here. Just make sure. But as we move towards this cold season, look, I know that there's going to be a lot of individuals out there and they get a lot more following than I do. Let's be honest. I'm never going to be pulling in 150,000 people um, for various reasons. One of which is that I'm just not going to hype stuff and scare people. And, you know, YouTube and those other algorithms really like that stuff. But what I can't say is that this cold season has a lot of different competing influences. I could make a case, very strong case, for a very active season for snow and ice. Host that, put in some scientific reasoning, cherry pick exactly what I want to use for that. Like I just focus on the stratosphere. I only do a passing mention on the tropics and make a case that way. Or I can make a case for a very warm winter, say La Nina 15 times, and then make a nice big southeast ridge. You can go that route. If you get a weak La Nina, you could definitely make that case. See, what I'm trying to explain to you is that right now I can go and create a forecast of almost anything that I would think would create the most traffic. Oh, I could do that in a moment. It's easy, right? All you got to do is cherry pick the data that you want, put it in there, and then play up that theme to whatever audience that you want to drive the most. But it's not a forecast. It's a hype cast. Excuse me. Had fantastic weather going to Atlantic City on Saturday. Drive back early Sunday morning. Just after midnight, Pine Barrens temperatures were in the lower 50s. Yeah, we've been in the upper 40s around here. It has been amazingly cool. Now, look, I'm crazy, so I had the door open. I'm enjoying it. I'm going out, watching the sunrise in the middle of forecasting. I love it, but that's not for everybody. Precipitation this fall, I do not see any type of robust above normal precipitation this fall. That could change as we head towards latter half of October and into November. But at least the front half, I don't have any data that goes anything more than maybe near normal, or just slightly below that. But nothing that would support above normal. Let's see here. CPC indicates above average temperatures in the 3 month outlook. All right, so here's the thing with the CPC outlook. Okay, I'm going to be very careful about this. They don't forecast the temperatures. They forecast like that. Those maps are what are the likelihood? What's the likelihood of below normal or above normal temperatures? It's not really a temperature forecast. All they're really saying is we think it's more likely to be above normal. Now, to be fair, I have yet to come across a 3 month forecast where they don't say we're likely to be above normal. I mean, they never say anything below normal. You know, it was very rare to see that, at least for the Eastern United States, and they have some good reasons for that. I'm trying to see if I can find. I could swear I had a link up here. Let me see if I can go home and pull up the data. Okay, so we must be looking at this, right? Now, what is this exactly? Okay, this is not a temperature forecast. What it's saying is a probability forecast. So they're saying that there's a pretty good probability for September, October, and November to feature above normal temperatures. Now, that doesn't mean it would be helpful if I show the map. Genius. There we go. All right. So, this is not necessarily a temperature forecast. What you take from this is that this is the CPC's idea of what's the most likely outcome. And the most likely outcome is above normal for the entire United States. It doesn't provide you any reasoning. Um, it's kind of like a quick shot in the dark as far as what they think the actual themes are going to be. But it doesn't tell you, for example, these darker shades does not mean it's going to be warmer. It just means that the potential is higher. So likely above. It could be likely above, but only a half a degree. See what I mean? Or it could be equal chance, and over here it's -1, and over here is +1. So it doesn't really give you any type of forecast. All it does is say the NOAA thinks that there's a better chance than not of temperatures being above normal. How much above normal, they don't tell you. So that's how you read that map. Let's see. I watched your coverage from February 1st and 2nd, 2021. What you remember about that storm? Oh, geez. Off the top of my head, not much. Oh, man. Oh, I remember it being long, and I remember having to go to sleep for 2 days. Yes, we were up all night. It was crazy. I must have had like three pots of coffee, easy. I remember sleeping for like 2 days afterwards. I do, yeah. That's a good one. I remember some convective snow, especially there was a pretty good band over Northwest Jersey, but I don't remember the specific details, start times, any of that stuff off the top of my head. I have it written down in my files, but Flushing Queens, it hasn't been below 60 so far. Yeah, I don't. Flushing anywhere in the New York City metro is going to be hard to knock down those temperatures until something like the cold front on Sunday comes through. You'll probably be below 60 by the time we get to Monday morning. What is the biggest past snowstorm you covered on YouTube that I could rewatch? Hmm. Probably, it's probably not the best quality, but probably the Boxer Day blizzard. That'd probably be it. Do you foresee another drought upcoming? I definitely think that we're going to be tipping towards drought conditions again this fall. I don't know if we fully get there, but we're definitely heading in that direction. 3 pots, wow, yeah, yeah. I was drinking so. I mean, like when we do the live, like I'm planning on doing this year, return bringing back the live coverage, but I'm doing it more like as a stream, which is gonna be fun because you're gonna see me get up, get coffee. Susan getting me coffee, um, stretching, just talking non-weather stuff, going over the latest data. We'll see whether people like it or not. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting. Does this pattern look similar to the end of last summer? Not really. Different dynamics involved. What was the year of the Boxer Day blizzard? God, what was that? 2010, somewhere in that nature. That was a great winter, though. That was fun. No, the what was fun about it was that leading up to Christmas, because I'm Italian, and back then I had all my family here, right? And we'd go. We were going to my aunt's, right? And I was telling everyone, hey, we're gonna have a really bad blizzard. My mom and dad were like, well, we're having everyone over the house tomorrow. You can't be going around saying that. And I was right. Yeah, yes, yes. Because everyone's telling me like no one on the news is saying anything. There's not going to be a blizzard, and I'm like watching the water vapor. I remember this going crazy about the water vapor and trying to explain there's the models are missing something, and I was going on these rants. At the time, we had these weather forums that we went to. Think of it. Anyone who's old like would remember like AOL, like the weather forums with AOL. It was kind of like that, but it was like individual websites, and we just started getting Twitter. That was a very very new thing. I think definitely Facebook, but and then YouTube. Now again, YouTube at this time was a lot of cat videos and stuff, so it really wasn't all that. But we were starting to doing that, and I'm looking at all this data and I'm updating on the website saying something is not right here. And that was the 23rd, where I was starting to like, this is having more of a negative tilt. This ridge is bigger. Model guys, I don't think is catching this right. I could be wrong, but I think we could see a really major winter storm out of this. And that's exactly what we saw because the trough went negative faster than what model guys, even the great European, was saying, and boom. Now, the most influential storm that really enhanced this whole business was actually Sandy. And I'm not saying this like, in terms of like I'm glad it happened, but it put me on the map from a lot of media personalities recognizing me because I was saying like, hey, this is going to be a problem several days out. And it allowed me, I got a couple of letters here of people who sent me letters saying, hey, thank you for giving me the heads up because I was able to get my grandparents out, blah, blah, blah. One guy tied their grandparents to a truck and drove them out because they didn't want to leave. So it was really cool to actually see that save lives and get people prepared more so than anything with money. Look, I mean, look, I'm not Rockefeller or anything, but we do okay. Um, let's see here. Will you have a book of the week recommendation on Friday? I'm waiting to get more books, or I might do a rehash starting next week with everyone returning back to college now of some college books I think everyone should get. Um, how many inches? Oh man, off the top of my head, I think we had like 20 or 22 inches here in Freehold. Uh, Sandy, there were boats on the Flatbush Avenue and the Belt Parkway. Yeah, and we had no power here in Freehold for 2 weeks, and there were like people fighting for gasoline. It was total 6 weeks. You were 6 weeks without power. 6 days. Well, there were some people in Southern Jersey that were out of power for 6 weeks. We had 2 weeks. I thought, man, that was rough. I mean, I was fine. I just pretended I was like a Boy Scout. I was actually doing the weather updates in the Freehold Raceway Mall because that's the only place that had power and also internet. A lot of winter forecasts are coming out this week. Why do you think it is too early? Well, I already explained that. There's like 90% of the data you need to make a winter forecast isn't even out yet, or isn't available. The observations aren't available. That's why. This is all like clearly just model driven. And I know that there are people who want to put out the forecast as early as possible. God bless you. Then you're going to have to issue. Let's see. I guarantee you that people are putting out the forecast now and in August are going to put out one in late September, mid October, and then mid November because they're going to have to keep on changing it. You watch. They're going to have like 5 different winter forecasts come, or they're going to call it an update, right? Um, I had a friend who had a boat in Hazleton Keyport area that moved from the dock to across the highway. That's crazy. Boxer Day, I think my part in Union County got at least 20 inches. Yeah, with the way that Boxer Day blizzard set up, it was like Central Ocean, Monmouth, and then up towards northeast New Jersey, New York City just got bombed with like 12 to 24 inches of snow. And then outside, that was more of a 6 to 12 inch range. That was a lot of fun. That was crazy. But yeah, look, there's just way too many fact. Like I was saying earlier, and you can go check out the video earlier. Um, there's just way too many factors that are missing. All right, you don't know even the sustained whether or not we actually have a La Nina or not. We don't know that. We don't know. There's some hints, but you don't know. So if you don't know that, good luck making an accurate forecast. And there was one guy who was making a description that sounded more, they were saying, let's see, it's going to be very quiet in the start of the year, and then we get very active towards the end. That's an El Nino winter. El Nino winters act like that. Not La Nina, it's El Nino. So there is no support for an El Nino this year. None. Zero. Zip. When will your winter forecast be out? Will you give it out first to premium members? The detailed analysis and breakdown everything is for premium members, and that is for likely around October 21st, 22nd, somewhere in that ballpark. And then the public is issued a little bit later. Usually I get it done for a Friday, and then the Monday I release the public, but the public is very, this is what I'm expecting. The premium goes into the details and breaks down the months and all that stuff. So it's more detailed. But I wait for a reason. I wait because I learned my lesson when I was younger. Now look, when I was younger, back in the day of GeoCities and all the websites were written in HTML, and your biggest thing was finding out what your theme was going to be on your, what was it called again? Not Facebook, MySpace. And of course, who your top 5 friends were, because that way you can get drama. Back in those days, sure, in my teens and 20s, I wanted to be the first one to issue a winter forecast. Say I was the one who was first. That's all ego. That see, once you get to my age in the mid 40s, you recognize 3 things about ego. It creates mistakes, it creates embarrassment, or it creates back pain because you think you can lift more than what you really can. So you learn to avoid those 3 things because no one likes back pain and no one likes to be embarrassed and no one likes to be wrong, right? So with that being the case, there is no reason to have a winter forecast out now because you don't have all the data now. You might get lucky. You might get lucky and be 100% right with what you're saying in August and early September. You may knock it out of the park. God bless you. You might as well go buy a lottery ticket too. You got lucky. Good job. All right. God bless you. Okay. But in the long run, it's going to catch up to you. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not going to be right or wrong, that I am superior. I'm not saying that at all, because God knows I've been wrong. But at least when I'm wrong, I know why I'm wrong. And then I can make adjustments. I would say anyone issuing a forecast out now, I would say, well, what's your reasoning behind it? And then listen very carefully, because they most likely don't have much of a reasoning at all. Let's see here. Well, it looks like those are all the questions here. Um, the you okay? So it's more like okay. So there's a question here: do you get more snow with La Nina or El Nino? Okay, so you've had some years where we had a lot of snow with either one. It's not so much like if you get an El Nino, you get a lot of snow, or if you get it's more of the strength. You actually get the most when you have a more of a neutral, right? But then when you have a weak state either way, you can have a lot of phasing going on, and you can actually end up with a lot of snowfall. Um, when you start getting into moderate phases of either one, that's when you start to get suppression of storms and you start to get the subtropical jet stream too strong or the polar jet stream too strong. And that's how you end up with very non snow like winters. Either it's cold and dry or it's warm and wet. But that's usually how it works out. How many hours does it take to work on? Oh, the winter forecast? Andy, how long do you think I'm banging my head working on that? Months? Yeah, months. Yeah, it's not hours, it's months. It's a culmination that I started back in August of getting notes, going over research, reading. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to pull a model. I'm also going to read the latest research, like from BAMS. I don't know if the Bulletin of American Meteorological Society, um, and all of the new research. I try to take in the new research. I read it every morning right after I get done forecasting and try to incorporate that into my forecasting process, see what works, what doesn't. Because theory is great, but then you have to work it in practice. Kind of reminds me of a Star Trek Next Generation episode I was watching where LaForge was trying to fix the warp drive, but there was a difference between what the theory was and what practical was. So you kind of have to have that fight all the time. So it was a fun episode while I was going over this weather data. So you have to include all that. Then you have to look at how these different factors are interacting as we move towards the cold season and your wavelengths are changing and how that is interacting with each other in a four-dimensional apparatus, right? So you have to have that in your mind. Make sure you have your right equations and put that all together. So it takes months. And then you write it. That could take hours. And with that, we're pretty much at 9 o'clock. I think we answered all of the questions. It's a nice little you know, nice little memory lane going back on Boxer Day. That was fun. So as always, thank you for following oh, and we're being invaded. Look at that. We have helicopters flying right over us because they're trying to trap me. I don't know. So with that, with that, we're going to end for tonight. Thank you as always for following and watching. And as always, stay safe out there.